This is the Wandering Mike.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wandering Mike. Today I'm here with Katarina. Hey, Katarina, how's it going?
Hello, Mike. It's going good.
That's good. That's all one can hope for.
Yes.
Yeah, so to get us started, if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, who are you, where are you from, anything you want to share.
Okay, so my name is Katarina. I come from Slovenia, which is a little country shaped like chicken in the middle of Europe. It is Middle Europe. It's not Balkans, even though sometimes I like to say so.
Right.
I'm an anthropologist, and I'm currently in my master's doing research on backpackers. And it's going slow, but it's going.
Very nice.
What else? I'm a Virgo.
That would have been my second question.
Yeah.
What's your star sign, or whatever you call that? Is it
Yeah.
called star sign?
Yes, exactly. Zodiac sign, star sign, astrology. I don't know. My sun sign is in Virgo. My rising sign is in Gemini, and my moon sign is in Sagittarius. Although that's very personal and maybe not a good idea to reveal on a podcast.
Yeah, it's also a very scary combination. Feels
It is because it's all mutable signs, isn't it? You know exactly what I'm talking about.
So if someone understood that,
That
that was for them. So yeah, that's obviously an interesting thing that we need to talk about as well. Meaning I have to ask you about it. Is your paper on backpackers?
yeah.
So I feel like that's actually a pretty interesting topic for this podcast as well. But before we get to all that, let's do it chronologically. So yeah, let's start with the question. If anyone isn't familiar with the term, what is anthropology? And more importantly, what got you interested in anthropology?
Well, that's a question I was afraid of because we had I think in my bachelor classes we talked in every lesson we talked about what is anthropology, how to define it, what is culture, and all of that.
Right.
And I still cannot define it. um, what I usually say to people is like studying every aspect of human life and culture. So it used to be um like Western anthropologists going into like how to say it, less developed places of the world,
Mm.
but by the Western definition, less developed, of course. And studying those cultures, and it used to be also a colonial instrument to control these people. Although my perception of anthropologists is that usually there were the the good people, like on the side of progress and equality, and there's some bad apples in every group, but that's how I see it. And today it's more like we just study different subcultures, different pieces of everyday life. For example, you can have anthropology of God words.
Anthropology of milk.
Maybe I was about to say like diet or
Right.
yeah, like humanitarian rights, or like there was a girl in my university who chose one bus line, and she rode the same bus line every day and observed people on that bus line and then wrote her thesis on that. So it's really, you can study anything with anthropology, and it's just, yeah, study of human being. And what got me into anthropology is right now it's kind of problematic But at the time I was 18 and I didn't know better. So I watched the Disney movie Moana,
Right.
and I just decided that I wanted to study Polynesian culture. And I checked all of the curriculums that could involve that, and I found my study, which was called Ethnology and Cultural Anthropology, and we had one class in cultures of Oceania or something like that.
Mhm.
Mm, so I chose that. Yeah. And why is it problematic is because, like, it's very colonial. It's very old mentality to go as a Western person study other cultures. So, but in a way, I like the full circle moment I have with my master thesis because I'm still in Australia, but I'm studying backpackers. Um. So yeah.
So, just for me, to understand the thing you were saying about different cultures,
Mm,
because to me it sounds like a good thing, isn't it? If you're interested in, like, as a Western or Middle European
mhm,
person, you're interested in the Polynesian culture or any culture whatsoever. To me, sounds like it should
mhm.
be a good thing that people like cheer you on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is, but when you have a person studying another culture, that there's this kind of power dynamic. You have the studied
Mm,
subject and the person who is like the expert
right.
studying. So I mean, I think it still should be studied, but there's also space now in the academia for the people from their own culture to study that.
Mm,
So I think it should be, yeah, instead of taking up space,
right.
as a Westerner, I think right to allow, I don't know, Maori people to study Maori culture. They know it better, anyways, so they have better
Yeah.
insights. Although I do think you can sometimes get good insights as an outsider, but I don't know.
No, that definitely makes sense. But yeah, I think I would just say it's it's always good to have more people like look into different things, but yeah, obviously they will always know best because it's their whoever they are in this example. But
Mm,
it's always good to look at a culture that you're also from, like you
mm,
know exactly what's happening, why people are doing what they're doing. Probably can get you more insights like that. So that's basically what got you started. Very specific kind of field, especially the way you explained anthropology to us,
mm,
which just seems like a generally very broad field
mm,
of things to study. And then Polynesian culture is a very um, small thing in there. So, what would you say from your studies so far? What's maybe the most exciting or surprising thing that you learned? Because you went in, you're like, oh, I want to find out something about Polynesian culture.
mm.
And so, are there other things that you learned on your studies and you were like, oh, wow.
I think, yeah, in every subject, no matter like if I found the whole subject boring, there were so many things mm, that I found interesting. Like, for example, what I can think of now is two regional subjects. So, ethnology or anthropology of Mediterranean and ethnology of Balkan. I Because those two subjects cover pretty broad region that's very diverse, but like talking about, yeah, the differences and the similarities and the whole concept of how it was created, just like the concept of Mediterranean or
Mm.
Balkans. But I think really there's so many interesting things that I learned that it's hard to say. Mm, mm, yeah. maybe the most thing that surprised me the most is that sometimes the subjects that I thought will be the most interesting were actually pretty boring.
Mm,
And the ones that I didn't expect to be interesting were like, wow. Because in the end, also it depends a lot on professors.
right.
Yeah. Mm.
Do you, do you have one example? I mean, I think I know what you mean, but do you have one example where you were like, "Oh, this topic just sounds so uninteresting," and then it was like, "Wow."
Mm, mm, um, maybe like just the shepherds in Mediterranean. Like, what can you say about and
About shepherds.
shepherds and like the way they transhumans, or how is it called? Like how they um transport their herds based on um seasons of the year.
Mm,
They're in different areas for different seasons, and yeah.
right.
Mm, or yeah, I don't know. Also interspecies anthropology, which is like, what the fuck is that?
What is it?
But then it's studying the relationship of between humans and animals, or humans
Right.
and like other, even fungi. And the I think it's a trend currently in anthropology to study that. But it's super interesting. But in the end, I didn't think like, what can you say again about mushrooms and humans?
We eat
Or
them.
yeah, mm, yeah. But overall, I think I just gained so much. At this point, I study, and for the last couple of years, I studied anthropology mostly because of how much it gave me for like my life, not just academic
Mm,
education, but yeah, it's so nice and it opens up your mind a lot. Also, I like that we talked about ethics of anthropology a lot, and you can apply that to any part of your life, like how to be an ethical person in general.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, anthropology was always one of those subjects where, like, you're definitely learning it, uh, or let's say depend. Like, it doesn't matter why you studied it because you had a very specific reason. Maybe some other people as well, but it's definitely a subject. When you study it, you learn something for life. I would say it's similar in that regard to like philosophy, like psychology,
Mhm.
and uh, also sociology. It's also a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, all these kind of fields, I feel like you definitely learn something about life in general, and that's why it's also super useful. Um, I feel like there was a question somewhere. I just
Hmm.
forgot it for a second.
Maybe what's the most useful thing I learned for life in
That's a great
anthropology?
question.
Oh, thank you. Because I just thought of an answer. I don't not pose it to myself. But I think I learned how to talk to people. I mean, I knew how to talk to people before, but just because anthropological interview is more focused on the person's life story than the subject itself. Or like you're studying
Right.
one specific subject and you want to understand how that ties into the whole being of that person that you're talking to. So you really want to extract, you want to know everything that the person is willing to give you. So yeah, learning to listen, but also I don't think I would be good at that if I was not a good listener in the first place. Mm, but yeah, just getting to know people is what I think is the biggest um get takeaway that I got from that.
So it just sounds like it's actually closer to psychology than one would think. Because, I mean, basically, what you just described in my head could be a therapy session. Like someone asking about your life story, someone asking how do these things like tie together and trying to get why you're behaving the way you're behaving to me sounds a lot like psychology.
Yeah, definitely. It is sort of, yeah. Um, yeah, and for a lot of people that we do interviews with, it's very therapeutic. That's also, if you do research on some of more delicate subjects, like, I don't know, abortion or grief or death, that it can be hard to find um, people to talk to. Um, and also it can be fine to actually study it, because of course it takes a lot of emotional, how this, you take on emotionally
Mm.
other people's emotions sometimes, and it's also important how to learn how to deal with that. But when you find interlocutors for that kind of topics, I think it's way more rewarding than any other topic, because you can see how much you can give them with, like, giving them space to talk about things that maybe in other situations in life they don't really speak or even think about it. Yeah. But it's more like we don't have tools to be the psychotherapists. It's we just allow them space to speak, which is also a form, I guess.
Right.
Mm.
So I had a question, but I think I'll use the question to already link it to like your specific project that you're doing right now. Um, but yeah, we can go into that slowly, but I think it fits quite well because I was just, yeah, with you explaining these interviews, I was kind of like, because when you do have like a therapist and you go into like a psychological thing, like you want to talk about yourself, and basically the outcome is like for yourself, it's for the one person. But in anthropology, I guess the question is like, what is the big end goal? Because I'm pretty sure like you're not going to write a paper about why Peter always takes the yellow car and not the red one.
Mm.
Like it's probably bigger than just one person, right? And maybe we can use your example with backpackers for that
Mhm.
because you're doing the research on backpackers. So what what does that all entail? So what is kind of the goal of the anthropological research? What are the things you're trying to get out of these
Mm.
conversations?
Well, anthropological research method is very qualitative instead of quantitative. So we want to dig deep into specific people. I mean, we value longer and more information rich interviews over purely factological, I don't know, analysis. Like, for example, sociology is very, like, a lot of data, but not in depth.
Right.
In anthropology, yeah, so we do a lot of in depth interviews, and then we draw certain conclusions from that, but we have to keep in mind that it's the conclusions are based on limited amount of data. So yeah, that's um, a hard question to answer. Um, so yeah, specifically for backpackers, there is already a lot of literature that I can draw from. Mm, describing certain behaviors. So that means that the pool of information is bigger than just what I will collect here.
Right.
We already, certain things are established regarding backpacker behaviors, but we need to keep in mind always that that's not true for every single one of the backpackers. And also, it's important to mention, if you find like a pet, that also you found some people who don't fit into the pattern. It's just this descriptive, like describing experience, I guess. And yeah, mm,
No, it does make sense.
mm,
Um, I mean, it's a very abstract thing to
mm,
talk about. But so I mean, I'm just taking all this information in, and so obviously there is like things that are always the same. But if we go, I mean, yeah, I guess you do see it at some point, because the thing I'm thinking about right now is, if it's not, if it doesn't have to be a certain quantity, how do we know how representative each thing is?
yeah, because we're not doing that, I guess. Sociology cares about being representative. We
Right.
just have our own ethnographic experience, and then we analyze it, draw some conclusions, keep in mind that things change and things are not simple also. But still, even though you don't have like exact representative result, it's still valuable, I think. Yeah.
No, no, it
Mm,
definitely is. I'm just,
mm,
s- I mean, it would be cool if all these things are, maybe they are, because I have no idea. But
mm,
it would be super cool if there's like a catalog,
mm.
and then you can just go in and read, oh, I don't know, Peter Parker,
Mm.
Manhattan, 1993, and then you can just read the interview. Does something like that
Oh,
exist?
no, there's different database bases where you can search based on like certain like with keywords.
Hmm.
Um, but no, because also a lot of people don't want to be um yeah named. They want to stay anonymous. So
Mm.
yeah, but I'm sure there must be a there's surely some projects who just focus on like life stories of specific. I know we watched a video actually of a specific family, I think in New York, um, where they interviewed, I think, three generations. So yeah, there's projects like that, but then
Mm.
also, if the person doesn't want to be named, the first rule I would say of ethics in anthropology is to protect your interlocutor over your own interest of research. So if they don't want something published, you don't publish it.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to say that I don't consider myself an expert on anthropology, not even like mm, not the person that could answer these questions, even though I am an anthropologist. What's he doing?
No, that's all good. It's just interesting to have a little look into it from the outside,
Mm,
because maybe it's just me, but I suppose maybe some people haven't heard about it either, and
yeah.
they're just
Well,
trying to have a look into the whole science of it all.
there is a book by Harari, I think Sapiens or Homo sapiens.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's advertised as like the book that like made popularized anthropology.
Mhm.
But personally, I tried to read it and I quit after like I think 50 pages because it's not. He presents some theories that are not backed up by scientific evidence as scientific evidence. So he draws really far fetched conclusions, not backed up by scientific evidence. And that's, I think, wrong. It's anthropology, but it's an interesting book, nonetheless, I heard. Um, so maybe, yeah, that's probably worth reading, but just keep in mind that not everything is as simple as he makes it seem, and also fact check what he says. Yeah.
Is because I've actually never read the book. Obviously, I've heard about it. Obviously, it
Mm,
was like in all the media and it's in every bookstore I go to. It's still always there.
yeah.
And I had a lot of friends read it and they
Mm,
recommended it as well. Um, but yeah, I haven't read it, so I don't know too much about what he's actually
mm,
talking about. But is that problem that I guess anthropology has to have as well as other sciences, where sometimes, like you said, theories are presented as facts, or maybe even disproven theories are taken as facts. Is that something that like is an issue inside of
mm,
anthropology and different like theses and researches
mm.
as well?
I think it's an issue in every science. Um, I actually wrote an essay not long ago about post truth society that we live in because now um, the information is so available to us that w- people choose to trust information that they find online or in other sources over the information that comes from actual research just because it fits into their narrative more. So I think what was the data in that paper that I read? It was something with like I don't remember the year, but it was like 2016 around there. There was oh fuck. I think it was something like that 90% of research papers on climate issues agreed on the fact that climate change is real, but when
Right.
public was asked if they think that scientists agree on that fact, I don't remember the percentage, but percentage of people that thought that scientists do not agree on that was
Yes.
pretty high. I think like more than 50%. So I think, yeah, that's something that we can find in any science. Mm, just because, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too problematic, but
Please. You can get
but
as problematic as you want.
yeah, because like people think their opinions are as valuable as scientists' opinion, but I don't think if you, I don't think my opinion is holds the same weight as someone's. If we're talking about, I don't know, neuroscience, my opinion does not have the same value as a neuroscientist's opinion because they have been studying that for years. Mm, yeah, and I think we get a bit lost in that. That's why.
Yeah. So now then the topic that you currently looking at, as we've said, is backpackers. So what kind of role does travel play in your life, and why is like, I don't know, since I'm not an anthropologist, I don't know the correct terms, but like what is so interesting about the people of backpackers?
Mm. What is interesting about them is that their lives are very transient and unstable, I would say. And also it's, yeah, they are removed from their bubbles back at home. They enter a new bubble here, which is the backpacker bubble. But I think every time that you remove yourself from the environment where you grew up, you have an opportunity to establish yourself in a new way. And I think that's the most interesting thing about backpackers, like who they are far away from everyone else, especially backpackers in Australia. I'm sure backpackers in Europe are different, in South America, they're different. But but people, some people or most people come here because it's the furthest place you can go away from home.
Right.
Mm, so yeah, there's it's interesting to explore why and then how it affects their identity. Also, how it affects their relationships with the people back home. And it would be also super interesting to talk to the people who go back home, like how they change again. Do they transform back into the old version? Do they keep the new version? Do they, is it like a mix up
I think
of
it's a
both?
mixture.
Yeah. Mm, but yeah, that's what I find interesting. But the reason I decided to study it, it's actually pretty simple. And it's just because I wanted to do a work and holiday visa in Australia for the last 2 years. And actually now it's gonna be 3 years. But I'm actually here. Yeah. But it took me 2 years to get here. Um yeah, and then in the whole process of that I decided that I wanted to do my masters, and then I was looking for a way how I can do both. So I decided to come to Australia on one work and holiday visa and study that at the same time. Yeah.
So obviously you're on a working holiday
Mm.
now.
Mhm.
Obviously you're not in Slovenia anymore. That's why we're
Yes.
having this conversation. Um, is that the first time you are away from home for a longer period, or do you have stances of being in other countries for like longer travels like that happened before?
Mm, I did one semester in Barcelona in 2021. Barcelona. And that was, yeah, a long period that I was away because it was during COVID, so I
Mm.
couldn't go back home. And then I did another semester just before I came to Australia, but that was, I think I stayed there for like from October to, and then I went back home in December for the holidays, and then I one more month, and then it was over in February. So yeah, and also I lived in Tenerife for a month and a half, but that's, at this point it's not a long travel anymore. um, yeah, but it's different. Erasmus is not the same as traveling like that I'm doing, like this, what I'm doing now, because it's still more organized. I think here you're more independent and you have to depend on yourself. Yeah.
You do.
Mm.
You do have to depend on yourself
Mm.
a long time before you're out of school, I think, as well. It's just easier to not do it. I think in school and in academia, it's easy to slip by being undisciplined, but then once you're out of there and you don't know how to depend on yourself, you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just my thoughts on all that. Um, so Yeah, basically, because you gave us a little bit like the superficial facts of the lifestyle of backpackers. Um, is that a group that you would like sort yourself towards that group? Would you say you're not in that group? Um, just from what you told us as well, now you're off on this adventure, and I don't know, maybe the adventure will be prolonged. I don't know. Or have you having any intentions to travel more? So yeah, what do you think? Where would you sort yourself in that category?
Well, in one paper that I read, backpackers are defined by 5 things, and I don't think I will remember all 5 of them. But one is for sure long-term travel. The other one is budget travel. I think one is probably sticking in a bubble with other backpackers. Mm, yeah, and I think re- mm, if I put myself in this criteria, I do check all the boxes. So yeah, sure. But I think also when you look at the backpacker group, or like, yeah, I think there's so many different people in the group, and like so many different groups that you can make of people that I don't, it's oversimplification if you define people as backpackers, but for the sake of definition, yes, I'm a
That was a very diplomatic answer. No, I like it. I sometimes.
Also, I own a backpack. I came with actually 2 backpacks. So
So you are definitely a
yeah.
backpacker. Um. Yeah. Well, I'm very excited to see what the whole research will yield at the end.
Mhm.
Um. But yeah, it's a. I mean, I guess it's with all sciences. Like it's always you need to define it somehow and all that. But yeah,
Mm.
for me, it seems like to say backpackers, and that's one group. But then again, you have the same issue. You're saying Australians, you're saying Germans, and it's
Yeah.
like obviously not every single person is going to be the same. Like
Mhm.
none of these people are going to be the same.
Yeah.
But still, there is some sort of empirical experiences where we can just draw conclusions and group people into
Mm.
groups.
Yeah, but again, I mean, if you ask people how do they define themselves, if you ask someone if they define themselves as a backpack, then they will say no, probably. But also,
Yeah.
if you ask them if they define themselves as French, well, depends where. But here, I think it's so like people don't want to be defined by anything, so they always say no. Yeah, and also because it's so you're in the international bubble, it doesn't really matter where you're from. So yeah, you define maybe yourself as the citizen of the world. That's what I think.
You
Mm.
hear me say that. That's something I say
I
sometimes.
am. I think you're not the only one.
Yeah.
That's yeah. That's the thing. I think because we are sort of like aliens. I think backpackers or like people who are here on work and holiday visa. I I think the way I see it, we were all aliens back home. So now we're here in this like space, and we don't want to be defined because we never wanted to define ourselves as the groups that we were surrounded with. So yeah,
That's a very deep instinct. And in case any governments are listening, we of course are not aliens.
that's
Stop
a
chasing us.
figure of speech, of course, a metaphor.
Um, no, but that's a yeah. I think that's a good thought to keep there
Mm,
with labeling people and labeling
mm.
and backpackers in specific. Um, well, I'm the king of transitions today. Talking about labeling people and putting people in groups to try and understand them better. We already talked about astrology in the beginning a little bit. Um, and I know that I talked about astrology one time with Hazley in New Zealand, but I don't know how many people have actually listened to that episode. Um, but because she explained it a little bit, she was telling us about star charts and all that stuff. Um, but she also didn't do it too detailed, I think. So anyway, so for you, what is it about astrology that you were like if we just keep it in the words I just used, if it's about labeling people and trying to understand people, why is astrology the one where you're like one of the ones where you're like, yeah, I can see that. I find that interesting.
Well, that's a wrong question.
And I'm
Because
glad.
no, because I want to say why I got into astrology first. And the reason I got into astrology was because I thought it seemed like everybody has opinions whether they believe in astrology or they don't believe in.
Mm,
And I felt that I don't know enough about astrology to make a decision.
right.
So I started studying it. And now I know a little bit more about it and I refer to it a lot. But n- not always in a serious way. But I do like finding patterns in people's behaviors and tying them to theories. Like, and for now, I think that's the system of classification of people
Mm,
that I know the best. But I think I would also enjoy categorizing people based on MBTI. That's the psychological test that I
oh, the
told
thing.
you about,
Yeah.
or any other psychological test, or I don't know, Chinese zodiac, or there's so many systems that you can classify people in. I like astrology because it is actually so complex and there is always something to more to learn. Um and yeah, some things just like when they line up and when they are seem true, it's exciting. Um yeah, but I don't know. I was interested in astrology since like 10 probably. I think I read it something about ascendant in a book, and then I asked my mother what's that, and then we calculated my chart. Yeah, but also a lot of different, like, if you classify that as a spiritual practice, I don't think it's a spiritual practice. I'm interested in a lot of that things also since a very young age, like Hinduism or oh my god, my brain. I don't know. Also Islam. I just like these things.
Okay. Um,
And tarot.
and
Mm,
tarot. Um,
mm,
can I ask you some more questions about tarot? Because I think we talked about that with his. Um, but before we do that, I had in my head, it's a great question, but if it's a hard question, just tell me. Um, but because you talked about systems of classification,
mm.
which I think sounds more eloquent than what I said. Um, but so do you think, or is there in your experiences a model? Because you said a lot of the ones that are there to already tell us a
Mm,
little bit about people, and there's a lot more that you didn't mention yet.
mm,
Um, but so, for example, because all these things, how they work is we're trying to put people into a group
mm,
that we can see, okay, we see from this group these patterns, and then we're trying to use that to help us to predict how a person would react in different situations. So, with that being said, is there one that you encountered that you would say has the most like it's the most reliable of the ones? So if you walk up to a person and say, "Hey, are you a Leo?" or you ask them, "Hey, are you German?" or "Hey, do you have blonde hair?" Like, what what do you think is one where it's the most reliable?
Oh, that is a really hard question.
That's what I was afraid.
Yeah, and especially because I don't know a lot of the systems super well. I think if you know the systems, like the psychological, I don't know, the MBTI, or there's another one, Enneagram or something like that.
Is that the one with like the colors and stuff?
No, that's human design.
I
Yeah. Um, I think if you know them well enough, maybe they can all work up to a certain point. Yeah, I don't know. For me, what makes the most sense is astrology, but only because I know it the best, I think.
mm,
Mm, yeah, also, I wanted to add, um, for the previous question, about like classifying humans into categories. I think I like it because I do think I am autistic, and that like it's also a way of like make it to make it more structured, like to make people are chaos. And you know, it's really hard to understand, and you make it a little bit simpler into dividing them into like 12 groups,
right.
explaining like why, if this planet is in this zodiac sign, it means this for the, I don't know, emotions or communication, or yeah. um, yeah.
Pitied. I mean, I guess the reason I asked is because obviously it's something that I also find quite interesting. And for me, basically, how I try to find out about people is by similar to what you have explained to us with like the anthropological interview, like I just ask questions.
Mm.
So basically, that's why I was wondering maybe there is like a set of 10 questions where you like, "Oh, I can ask these questions to people, and then afterwards I know exactly." I mean, obviously, it's not gonna work like that, but, like, in the ideal, uh, work like that. Because for me, it's basically it's always very well, I guess what I'm doing is if I'm getting to know a person, I'm trying to do the exact opposite and not put him or her into any groups and just be like, so that happened. Why did that piss you off? Or like, oh, why? Oh, that sounds like did something else happen that made you so upset? You know, and just
Mhm.
like trying to figure out that specific person rather than going, um, oh, are you a Virgo? Maybe your Jupiter just wasn't high enough, you know. But you know what I'm saying, right? So,
Mm.
um, because that would be very interesting to me
Mm.
if I knew
Yeah.
that instead of having to go into the specific person and
Mhm.
making it, if I could just go, "Oh, are you Swedish? Oh, now it makes sense," you know?
Yeah. I don't think I use astrology like that. I don't use it to make up judgments about a person based on their sign. But I do like to know people's sign or even their chart, and then like I see certain behaviors or they say something and I think or I say it's all
Right.
that, like
Because there's
tying
no
it all
Taurus
together.
in your house.
Yeah, for example.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, um I don't judge people based on their sign or a chart. Also because I don't think I understand it enough. But even if I did, I think, yeah, we are so complex, and it's not, yeah. Mm. But it's the same as, if you know a person well, and they, I don't know, things about their childhood, and you see certain behaviors, and you see that they behave the way they do because of a certain thing that happened in their childhood. It's just trying to understand people, but with astrology, it's like trying to understand people in a more illogical way, because how could stars affect someone's personality?
Yeah. How?
Don't know.
Um, yeah, but it's definitely an intriguing field. And I mean, obviously these things are written pretty generally as well, so that they
Mm,
like make sense for a broad spectrum of people. But still, it's still, like you said, very interesting of a feeling if you read something and you're like, oh yeah, it
mm.
kind of correlates. So there must be something to.
Also, it's very old. I mean, yeah. So,
So it has to be good.
well, there has to be something about it.
No, of course, fair. Otherwise, we would have like shed it a long time ago.
Yeah.
If it was like, um, so yeah, you mentioned an even more mystical and mysterious thing than astrology, which is tarot.
Mhm.
If that's the English pronunciation, I'm not sure.
Tarot.
Tarot.
Mhm.
Might have been more German. Um, but yeah, here I'm pretty sure that not everyone knows what we're talking about. So, what is tarot? Yeah, I think I'll just start with that
Mhm.
question.
Well, I don't know a lot about the history of tarot, but I do know that they were designed that their cards.
Mhm.
They were designed as playing cards in the Middle Ages, I think, and then from that, two different games were developed. One is Tarok or Taroki, which is played a lot in Slovenia, supposedly also in Italy, certain regions of Italy and Austria and Switzerland, but I have met nobody who knows what that is except
Correct.
for Slovenians. And the other one is Briscola, and maybe even other games, but and Briscola is played in Italy. Um, and the tarot cards that are still um in more or less the same design as they were in the Middle Ages, I think, are now used as a like divination tool, or
Mm, cool.
yeah, I guess that's how you would define it. You don't have to use it as a divination tool. I use it as a sort of like psychotherapeutical tool, because it's so it consists of the major arcana and the minor arcana. Major arcana consists of 21, 22 cards that depict. The first one is the Fool, which is like a joker in normal cards, and it depicts the fool's journey through life. So it takes you through different stages, like death, happiness, strength. I don't know. Each card represents a period or an event in a life of any person, really, because we are the fools.
Yeah.
And then the minor arcana represents more specific situations, I would say. Mm, and yeah, I like to do tarot just to think about certain situations in my life. I wanted to mention symbolism, because the Catholic symbolism in the cards is super heavy. So, and I like symbolism. I like Carl Jung, and I like to interpret dreams and the symbols, and also I like mythological symbolism and like finding different like how the same symbols in different cultures mean the same thing. So that's what got me into tarot. And yes, yeah, that that's a thing. What was the question?
Uh, well, pretty much. I just asked what is tarot
Yeah.
first. Um, so I guess a good follow up question would be, um, yeah. So how is compared to all the other things we talked about so far? So how is tarot actually used? How do people, or how do you personally um, use it to get information? I guess that's the is that the primary point of tool?
I guess. I mean, for me, it's more like, yeah, like gain information is okay. It's also what I would say is to look in the mirror because it, it reflects reality sometimes. I mean, or yeah, it does. Mm, Sometimes it's crazy because if I do a lot of readings about the same situations, actually the same cards come out. So that the more spiritual part of it. But also you can, I think, look at it pretty from a grounded, like logical perspective, which is just like looking, so having a situation that you have a question about, and then these cards come out, you see different symbols that mean certain things, and maybe you gain another perspective on the whole thing. Um, yeah. But also people use it to, yeah, predict future, I guess. Mm, yes.
So from the first thing, just the way how you explain it, and I mean, again, we're back to the it's all very similar. Maybe it's even a little bit psychological as well. Coming going into a tarot place, like
Mm.
being able to talk to someone. Um, I lost my question. Well, what did I want to ask about? Um, yeah, because it's like you're talking to someone, and basically, where did I want to go with this? Mm. Yeah. Um, I guess, I mean, obviously telling the future and stuff like that, um, is a different thing, but basically it's it sounded a little bit like meditation as well, just giving yourself time to sit with a specific uh, question or uh, thing that happened, and basically just like you said, giving yourself symbols, trying to interpret them, and trying to figure out how. So yeah, long story short, to me it sounds like an assisted meditation a little
Yeah,
bit.
it does. Yeah, and yeah, I think it's also really good for journaling. I I think it's a tool for, yeah, getting to know yourself better. Mm, and yeah, meditation tool. That's a good way you put it. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Mm,
that's what I
mm,
because I love meditating. Like
mhm,
meditation has been part of my life for a long time, and I always that's why I compare a lot of things to meditation, because
mm,
if people tell me certain rituals or
mm,
like routines that they have,
mm,
and I just always kind of see the meditative aspect in that
mm,
in those things. Um, so yeah, that just made me think
mm.
of that as well. Um, yeah. So I actually have a lot of questions in my head about tarot, but I think it's just going to be weird questions. That's already.
You can ask. Yeah, wait. Please.
Um, well, basically, I mean, I guess the interesting thing about this, or at least for me, is always if we are taking that second thing where we're saying we are predicting the future or we are inquiring about decisions and stuff like that. Did you ever have experiences where then afterwards you were like, yes, that's exactly what the card said will happen?
Yes, I did. And I wasn't even serious when doing the reading. It was my friend. Oh, I don't know if I should say that. Basically, I predicted a breakup as a joke, and then it happened. um, and I think I had a couple of moments like so. Now I don't. If I don't do a lot of readings for other people, but if I do, I don't like relationship questions. Um, because yeah, I don't want to say things if cards come up.
Yeah.
um, mm, but yeah, um, I think it's yeah. Also, I had situations in the past where I depended too much on the tarot, where like I could not make a decision by myself, and
Mm,
then also like the tarot became useless essentially. Like just nothing made sense. So
mm,
I do think there's you need to remain a healthy boundary with it because I mean anything spiritual can just suck you in and like strips you of your authority. I mean you willingly strip
right.
yourself of your authority in a way. Mm, but yeah, I mean decisions are hard, but still you should be the one who makes them. not
Not the
not
card.
yeah. Mm, mm,
But yeah, that, like you said, like it needs to kind of, you still need to be there,
mm,
and having quote unquote conversation with the cards and not just like surrendering
mm,
to them. And
yeah, that's hard sometimes when you're in a bad place and then you don't want to take responsibility for your life. So
then the Bishop
mm.
of Hearts shows up, and you're like, oh shit.
Because you mixed up the Thank God.
I don't even remember. We had like 3 swords and
Yeah,
5 squares, and
that's squares, but it's close.
well, they're not squares, like rectangles.
No, no, it's
No,
swords, cup,
or cups.
pentacles, and the one. Yeah.
I was close.
Yeah. Squares, yeah.
And well, we're actually, as I just checked the time, we're 1 hour and 5 minutes.
Okay, we can do 30 more minutes.
No,
Or not.
I think we're good.
Mm,
I'm happy with what we talked about. It was really interesting to see into anthropology for a bit, and also talk a little bit about backpackers, because apparently that's what we talk about on here quite sometimes. It's traveling.
mm,
Um, so yeah, and then the little thing into astrology and tarot.
mm.
So everyone who wants to know more, just Google or ChatGPT tarot and astrology, and it can teach you.
It is very useful tool sometimes. Although Mike does not like it.
I didn't say I don't like it. I just don't like technology in general.
Mhm. Are you now sucking up to the robot? Mm,
Well, it can be useful
mm,
if
definitely.
you use it in the right way.
You would not have a podcast without technology.
True.
Yeah. There is actually I don't know a lot about it, but classification of backpackers, or something that the industry tried to make happen, but they did not succeed, which was flashbackers, and that was
Uh,
backpacking with a lot of technological gadgets.
right.
But I don't know. I haven't read the article about it yet or the book, so I don't know a lot about it. I just know that it exists.
Oh, I've heard that term as well.
Yeah.
Thought that it's also like it's gonna be like better bed, like more expensive,
Mm,
like rooms in general, just and therefore, yeah, then being
mm,
more expensive as well.
yeah. I think it's like digital nomads. Yeah.
Sorta, yeah. I think
Mm,
that's kind of the idea.
yeah.
Flash. Okay.
Mm. Stupid term. I think, like, what the fuck? Where did it come from?
Market.
Yeah, stupid people in marketing.
All right. Before we start hating on marketing, um, I'm just gonna say thank you, Katarina. Thank you for taking the time and chatting with me.
No problem. You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
All right. So with that,
This
goodbye, everyone.
wonderful episode comes to an end.